The first direct talks since 2022 between delegations of Russia and Ukraine are taking place in Istanbul. In Palestine, attacks on refugee camps, hospitals and schools leave nearly 200 people dead. And the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, accused several senators of receiving money to block the popular consultation that sought to improve the labor and social conditions of Colombian citizens. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We'll begin with the news. We now begin with the information. The first direct talks since 2022 between the delegations of Russia and Ukraine are taking place in Istanbul. Chaired by Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, the delegations headed by Presidential Secretary Vladimir Medinsky on the Russian side and Defense Minister Rustem Umerov representing Ukraine are gathering at the Dolmavash Palace. The meeting, an initiative of Russian President Vladimir Putin, was originally scheduled for Thursday, but was postponed after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky refused to participate. In this context, while kicking off the reunion, the Turkish foreign minister stressed the importance of the event and called on all parts to seize the opportunity to advance on the path towards peace.
As you appreciate, at this stage, there are two paths. One of the paths will begin a process that will lead us to peace. The other will lead to more destruction and loss of life. I would like to draw your attention to a point. This meeting is the first direct contact between the parties since March 2022. We must seize this opportunity to advance on the path to peace. Every day we are late causes more lives to be lost.
And earlier on Friday, an initial round of meetings arising from the Ukrainian disagreement took place in Istanbul. The gathering between delegations of Turkey, Ukraine and the United States was hosted by the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan and included on the U.S. side Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy for Ukraine Keith Kellogg, and U.S. Ambassador to Turkey Thomas Barak. Representing Ukraine were Foreign Minister Andriy Shiva, Defense Minister Rustem Umerov, and Head of the Presidential Office Andriy Yermak. The three-way talks opened after, on Thursday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky refused to attend the scheduled meetings with the Russian delegation. And meanwhile, the European Union has announced that it will impose the 17th package of sanctions against Russia next Tuesday with immediate effect. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz announced that the package was ready and to be adopted in Brussels on Tuesday. For her part, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that the EU is further limiting Russia's access to combat technology, adding that the restrictions would impact 189 ships in Russia's fleet. It is important to note that since the beginning of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine on February 24, 2022, the EU has approved 16 sanctions packages with no clearly visible effects. And the signing of the agreement on joint development of mineral resources on the territory of Ukraine between Kiev and Washington gives the U.S. absolute priority in the development and sale of resources. Let's learn more with our colleague Oleg Yasinski.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky divided Ukraine's mineral resources and infrastructure between his two main partners. He handed over the nuclear power plants, ports, and strategic assets to the European elites and the rest to the United States. The 100-year agreement with Britain, however, left little to the United States, hence the theatrical maneuvers on the issue of security guarantees.
De ahí las maniobras teatrales con el tema de las garantías de seguridad.
Формально, конечно, эта сделка закабаляет. ресурсную базу Украины.
Formally, this agreement enslaves the resource base of Ukraine, putting it at the complete disposal of a country that does not want to deal with it. I cannot imagine a single private investor who, on the basis of such meager data, would invest not just $1 billion, but even $1 million in the development of a field.
Да даже $1 миллион в какую-то вот, так сказать, разработку, значит, какого-то месторождения. Нет даже элементарного.
There is not even the most primary data that can serve as a basis for any kind of exploratory and detailed work. That is, you can name 1,000 more parameters that will scare any normal investor who values his money.
Любого нормального, элементарного инвестора, который дорожит своими деньгами.
Hoy en día Cargill, Monsanto y DuPont, inversores.
Today, Cargill, Monsanto, and DuPont investors Vanguard, BlackRock, and Blackstone own 40% of Ukraine's arable land. For these deals, Kyiv received $17 billion in loans from the International Monetary Fund and from the offices of the three corporations on its territory. In short, Ukrainian land does not belong to the country, but to multinational corporations.
No le pertenecen al país, sino a las empresas multinacionales.
Но об этом Зеленский, конечно же, не расскажет в своем каком-то очередном интервью.
But Zelensky, of course, will not talk about this in his next interview and in the context of some idiotic images. It's all sold out there. Sovereignty has been sold. That's what it can be called briefly and unequivocally. Although it was previously sold to BlackRock and, of course, to the British according to the 100-year agreement. And also to the Ukrainian oligarchs. It's all theirs for a long time. I wonder who will get all this later.
Интересно, кому на самом деле потом это все достанется.
Según el reciente acuerdo firmado entre Estados Unidos y Ucrania,
according to the recent agreement signed between the United States and Ukraine, new and unlicensed mineral sites will be transferred to United States control. The fund provides for equal contributions from both countries, but Ukraine does not have the funds. Its foreign debt exceeds $169 billion, and additional budgetary investments are impossible.
y las inversiones presupuestarias adicionales son imposibles.
Она вообще, эта сделка не имеет никакого отношения к боевым действиям.
This agreement has absolutely nothing to do with military actions, but Trump is including it in the terms of the agreement. We understand that the United States is money, and this determines United States policy from a political point of view. And the authorities, if their money is there, their business, great, they will continue to negotiate. In fact, we will never see the full text of the agreement in the first place because there is a closed part. That is, they are dividing something there and we won't be able to know the details.
Todos estos acuerdos no corresponden a los intereses nacionales.
All these agreements do not correspond to national interests, do not contribute to the state budget, national security, and the country's development prospects. It is simply the sale of the homeland by Zelensky in the name of personal security guarantees.
teleSUR, Moscow.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. We continue with more information. In Palestine, attacks on refugee camps, hospitals, and schools have left nearly 200 people dead. At the close of midnight on Thursday, health authorities recorded 143 fatalities, while Israeli military forces continue to bombard the areas it plans to displace. Rescue groups report several bombings with dozens of dead that they have not been able to rescue because they are assisting survivors. And in this context, the neighborhood of Al-Sultan in Beit Lahiya has been one of the hardest hit. The genocidal massacres this Thursday and Friday also extended to the occupied West Bank, where 5 young men were killed in the city of Tamun. More than 1,500 Gazans have lost their sight as a result of the war, while thousands more are at risk of losing it due to the lack of resources and medical supplies. Let's find out more.
Las lesiones que han sufrido los ciudadanos son múltiples. Esquirlas, cuerpos.
The injuries suffered by the citizens are multiple: shrapnel, strange bodies inside the eye, tears caused by nearby explosions. All of these cause internal trauma that severely affect vision.
السلام صباح مدير مستشفى العيون الحكومي.
The ophthalmology hospital and ophthalmology services in the Gaza Strip suffer enormously due to the strict siege on Gaza, the non-entry of medical aids. Medical and surgical supplies, especially medicines and consumables, as well as the prohibition of entering medical equipment necessary to perform complex eye surgeries, retinal surgeries, and diagnostic equipment that were destroyed during the raid and assault on the hospital at the beginning of the war in 2023.
من خلال طبعا هذا الحصار المطبق على قطاع غزة وعدم تدخيل.
El Hospital de Oftalmología en Gaza, que
The ophthalmology hospital in Gaza, which performed 14 surgeries a day before the war, can now perform only 4 operations a day, prioritizing the most serious cases.
وسائل القتالية المختلفة لا شكل تأثير مباشر على العينين أو على البصر.
Approximately 1,500 patients have lost all or part of their sight, most of them as a result of direct attacks on their eyes from the constant bombardment.
أي شيء فيها إصلاحها وبالتالي هؤلاء فقدوا البصر من اللحظة الأولى. تمام. هناك طبعا إصابات تؤدي إلى حروق شديدة في قرنية.
Many of them have lost their sight because of the lack of essential treatments, such as patients with glaucoma or diabetic retinopathy.
على قرنيات العين وبالتالي هؤلاء المرضى سيعانون من فقد الإبصار ما لم يتم عملية زراعة قرنيات لهم. هناك
And also because of the lack of medical and surgical avenues and necessary equipment such as lasers and other equipment to perform complex surgeries.
المسافات خاصة الذين يقعوا في بؤر قريبة من عملية الانفجار.
Las fuerzas de ocupación destruyeron partes del hospital.
The occupation forces destroyed parts of the hospital during their incursion, causing the breakdown and deterioration of approximately 90 of the essential medical equipment.
Partially or completely, whatever, because of the
90% of the diagnostic equipment has been completely destroyed. 100% of the equipment used in complex surgeries, such as phacoemulsification and vitrectomy for cataracts and retina, has also been destroyed.
The cause was other chronic diseases as glaucoma.
The hospital had 4 of these devices, all of which were smashed and their screens broken in the raid. Ocular diagnostic equipment such as slit lamps were also damaged.
The service, surgical service or drugs.
Autoridades sanitarias reiteran el llamado urgente.
Health authorities reiterate the urgent appeal to the international community, as well as to all humanitarian organizations, to support patients in the Gaza Strip and to press for the entry of medical equipment needed for eye examinations and surgical interventions.
Exámenes oculares e intervenciones quirúrgicas.
China's Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Geng Shuang, urged all nations to promote the implementation of the two-state solution, describing it as the only viable resolution to the Middle East conflict. Speaking at the commemoration held by the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People at the UN headquarters in New York, Geng marked the 77th anniversary of the Nakba. In this case, Geng emphasized that the Nakba remains a profound trauma in Palestinian collective memory and continues to fuel their struggle for justice and the right of return. He called for concrete steps towards a comprehensive and lasting solution, stressing that only through the two-state framework can the Nakba be consigned to history.
On the question of Palestine, China, upholding fairness and justice, remains steadfast in its support for the justice cause of the Palestinian people to restore their legitimate national rights for the early establishment of the fully sovereign and independent state of Palestine based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, and for the early admission of the state of Palestine as a full member of the United Nations.
Now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow the page and activate the notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with the information. Through a message published on his X account, the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, accused several senators of receiving money to block the popular consultation that sought to improve the labor and social conditions of Colombian citizens. The president criticized the actions of a group of congressmen who, according to him, act as against the general interest and violate the principles of the Constitution. He urged citizens to mobilize to demand labor and health reforms and warned of possible strikes as a response to this situation. Furthermore, he emphasized the need for the people to take an active role in the creation of laws that promote social welfare, rejecting corruption and paramilitarism. We continue on topic as there have been several reactions of rejection to the Senate's refusal to carry out the popular consultation on changes in the labor policy. The government announces multiple irregularities during the session held on May 14th. Let's hear details with our correspondent, Hernán Tobar.
Another blow to the country's workers was dealt by a sector of the Colombian Senate, which has generated several complaints about the irregularities that were presented against the popular consultation, which generated actions on the part of legislators of the government coalition. I filed a formal request before the Senate's Board of Directors to repeat the vote of the popular consultation, since my appeal request was illegally disregarded due to voting irregularities.
Y es que en la plenaria de Senado se modificó el orden del día.
Already in the plenary, the agenda was modified, which delayed the approach of the popular consultation. A sector of the opposition made possible the discussion and vote of an appeal that revived the labor reform discarded some time ago by some senators present here, further delaying the processing of the consultation in a delaying strategy. In the late afternoon, the vote of the consultation was held, which was sunk in this corporation by the opposition sectors and with allegations of several irregularities and fraud in the procedure.
Mesa directiva vota la consulta popular en un abrir y cerrar de ojos.
The board of directors voted the popular consultation in the blink of an eye, as many of you saw. It did not even last 3 minutes in the voting, and they closed it when they saw that they effectively had 1 or 2 votes of gain. Here we have not really lost the war. The people have always had to resist.
Perdido la guerra. Al pueblo siempre le ha tocado resistir.
Y por supuesto, también habrá una reacción popular.
And of course, there will also be a popular reaction because they believe they are going to fool the people. The people are going to increase their indignation with this Congress of the Republic and with these dark actions headed by Efraín Cepeda.
El presidente Gustavo Petro calificó esto como un fraude y señaló.
The president of the country described this as fraud and indicated that he will resubmit to the Senate the popular consultation. He requested the mobilization of the people and their organization in permanent meetings throughout the country in view of the affront that a sector of the Senate made against the participation of the people in key determinations such as the labor reform. So the meetings and strategies of the social, popular, and political sectors have already begun. The president is telling us there is the people who are the sovereign if the Congress of the Republic and a handful of senators are above more than 30 million Colombians who make up the social and popular base. Then the people have to wake up. If the people wake up in a calm and peaceful way, not asking for respect for their sovereignty, but demanding and making their sovereignty respected, surely the president can go further. And we are going to define a course that will be taken in general by 1,105 municipalities that will hold popular councils, and we will effectively mandate that in Colombia, popular sovereignty takes precedence over representative democracy.
Alternativamente, desde el gobierno ya se iniciaron las acciones legales.
Alternatively, the government has already initiated legal actions in view of the irregularities denounced in the voting process, including complaints to the control agencies and the investigation of the President of the Senate.
In other news, in Colombia, Director of the National Police, Carlos Fernando Triana, announced the arrest of one of the accused in the killing of 13 people inside a mine in the province of Patás in northern Peru. Joint work and coordinated actions to locate the suspect led to the arrest of Miguel Antonio Rodriguez Diaz, who will be charged for the crimes of criminal organization, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated homicide. According to Peruvian judicial records, Rodriguez Diaz entered the mine shaft with 20 other people, presumably to take the material previously stolen by other miners. This was allegedly followed by an armed confrontation that resulted in 13 fatal victims. The next few hours could bring Rodriguez Diaz's repatriation so that he can face justice in Peru. Precisely in Peru, the Public Prosecutor's Office has filed 2 constitutional complaints against the president, Dina Boluarte, in less than 12 hours, adding to the endless list she has accumulated. The most recent is related to the National School Feeding Program Caliwarma and the National Program of Platforms for Social Inclusion. The Public Ministry accuses President Boluarte of aggravated collusion for favoring Victor Torres Merino, a close friend of her brother, Nicanor Boluarte, who is also linked to serious crimes. The facts occurred when the current president was Minister of Development and Social Inclusion and awarded a contract of almost 12,000 euros to Torres Merino, a childhood friend of her brother's. In other news, a massive blackout has been affecting Haiti since Thursday after a group of unknown assailants attacked the Peligre hydroelectric power plant. According to Haiti's state-owned electricity company, the attack, which has not yet been claimed by any group, is forcing them to suspend service to preserve the equipment. They point out that the chaos in the country has delayed the restitution of the service in the power plant located in Plateau Central, an inland basin shared with the Dominican Republic. Although the state company does not specify the real extent of the failure nor the time it will take to repair it, they assure that it is an atrocious act and ask the authorities to guarantee the security of these strategic installations. The 22nd Ibero-American Judicial Summit will conclude this Friday with a packed agenda in Santo Domingo. Highlights include the election of the next pro tempore and permanent secretariats for the 2025-2027 and 2025-2029 time periods, which will steer future regional judicial cooperation. Delegates will also sign the Santo Domingo Declaration, reaffirming their commitment to justice, liberty, equality, and solidarity through Ibero-America. The closing ceremony will feature awards recognizing gender-sensitive rulings, best legal practices, and a special honor for Judge Jorge Subero Isa. The final day's event at the Eduardo Brito National Theater will mark a significant step towards strengthening and modernizing justice systems across the region. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.